Super Mario. There isn't too much you can say about him. Okay, yes, fine, you can say a lot about him, but what would be the key trait that defines him? Okay, really, can you not just bear with me? He's been a character that's been a part of many generations and many childhoods. The 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s. Heck, with Super Mario Odyssey, another generation will be introduced to the magic of Mario. With that game on the horizon, I think it's a great time to talk about the character and one key trait that defined him and allowed the landscape of gaming to evolve. The jump. Cause you know, I'm trying to establish some professionalism here. Well, that's exactly it, Mr. Cat, because the jump has become a staple part of gaming. It's almost synonymous with the genre of gaming, but to believe, there was a time where this wasn't the case. A simple answer to the video's title may be that Mario jumps to get over pipes, hit blocks, and crush the skulls of those Goombas and Koopas in his size 11 Tims. Maybe he is a psychopath. But the jump did more for gaming than one may think. And the only place we need to look at that is up and down. How the Y-axis has evolved in gaming. Anyways, we're gonna have to go back to a time where this axis was not associated with jumping. That is, the golden age of gaming. Many games from this era and earlier took a top-down view, which basically means movement in the X and Y directions were just different forms of horizontal movement. This also meant games with a foreground perspective were far and few between. If you've kept up with your favorite game reviewers, you'll notice many of the games at this time ranged from vehicle shooters, ship-based shooters, Pong clones, brick breakers, car games, sports games, board game simulators, and text-based games. The reason there were so many similar games, other than not having intellectual property laws, were the hardware limitations. Now usually, they made the most out of this screen space. To take a popular example, many of these space shooters had it so you would be on one side of the screen shooting at stuff coming from one direction, or be in the center of the screen having shoot at all directions. This is why many old games had their interface take place on only one screen, and why these games were not very complex. In short, the Y-axis couldn't appear as how it does in our real world due to the hardware limitations of arcade games and home consoles of that time, so we're gonna have to look at when humans started being depicted in games and how they moved to see when jumping first appeared. This is a little ambiguous because there were representations of people, like in Gotcha, but they weren't people. They were just dots, icons representing people. There was also Death Race. Huh? Huh? Anyone? Huh? When it comes to having people that are a little more, people, there were examples like in Gunfight, Jaws, Berserk, even in games like Petit 5, one of the first RPGs, but as you'll see, these people were just icons, they weren't really characters. As for the first time people were jumping in games, it is also kind of underwhelming because that's creative. Creative. That's a good word. Creative. That was some creativity. Some creative thinking right there. And then the circus game. Look, it's like a brick breaker, but more creative. Look how creative. Creative. Again, this is just an example of hardware limitations and its natural opposition with the jump. Jumping in nature is a finite ability, a motion that has movements that have a beginning and an end. In order to communicate such an ability, then those parts needed to be portrayed, and if you look at games from the 70s, they didn't have high ratings in the animation department. It's only until Miyamoto and Yokoi began development on Donkey Kong that the platformer was born, sort of. In Donkey Kong, you take control of one of Mario's first incarnations, Jumpman. And I mean, I don't know if I was the only one, but this is what I thought Drake and Future's song was about. In the game, you need to climb to the top of this construction site to save a woman from this giant lawsuit. Yeah, good thing you got out of that. Of course, vertical movement was still restricted inside of a single screen. But you have to recognize something about this first game. I know it's nothing special these days, but this was one of the first time that there were people in games that acted like people. There were characters that had personality traits and acted certain ways. And alongside this is one of the first games where up was up and down was down, where gravity existed in a game where people acted like people. Well, sort of. This has platforming attributes, but it's still static, meaning jumping wasn't used as a form of upwards navigation. Instead, there were ladders and elevators. You didn't really have to jump a lot. Jumping was used as a form of defense, as a way to react to barrels rolling on by. And not only that, but jumping off these girders would cause Mario to die. Hurts. And this realism was actually one of the biggest complaints Donkey Kong got. It's like Miyamoto gave the players this awesome ability right in front of their face, but they were severely restricted in using it. And this was a key moment. It's when Miyamoto thought, what if players could jump from really high and not break their legs? In Mario Bros, you can now use it as a form of attack and navigation to the top of the screen. So while the character could still get to most parts of the screen, different rules dictated how they moved there. It was Super Mario Bros. Where this ability truly got its acclaim. Reading into what Miyamoto said, they called it Super Mario Bros. In reference to Mario's increased jumping durability. Miyamoto himself actually refers to this ability as being superhuman, as Mario no longer broke his kneecaps if he jumped from somewhere really high. This may not be the first game where jumping was introduced, but what it did with it changed how games were perceived forever. Super Mario Bros. Introduced the world to the side-scroller. As I mentioned, older games utilized single-screen games due to hardware limitations, and extending the game past that was just starting to happen. You could continue with what was already being done, with games still having a top-down view. Except now, the illusion of movement was more pronounced as you could enter new areas. And for many games, this worked wonderfully. But what about if you take it to a foreground view, with a character navigating space like a cartoon character? This is where the jump becomes really powerful, and in Super Mario Bros., it does two things for the gameplay. Firstly, it changes how horizontal and vertical space is understood and navigated. Mario can either move horizontally left or right, or he can jump within a certain arc forwards or backwards. This sets parameters on what the player can and can't do, and it shaped the sort of levels that they could design, such as the size of pits or the heights of blocks. Secondly, it's an input that relies on reflex and precision. There are of course games that had timed inputs before this, but having a jump be the action you perform, I don't know, I feel like it communicates something people understand. You mistime it, and you're dead. It's much more relatable than... This brings us back to Mario and how the jump defined him. And I mean, many people have tackled the topic of Super Mario Bros. And how it changed gaming and how it was a landmark game, but you gotta really think about it. It was really a landmark game, and many people will have reasons for why this was the case, but I think one of the main reasons was the ability to jump. Oh, but I'm not, because before this point we were playing games with scores and rules and whatever, but in Super Mario Bros., it let the vast audience of North America and Japan see that games could have story, could have characters that we could connect with. And I think this wouldn't have been so pronounced had it not been for our connection to the character. It's been a natural human condition to be licking the boot heel of gravity. Over centuries, we've found new ways to navigate it, but still, as a race, we dream to conquer it. And I loathe you for it every day. What I'm getting at is, our restriction to verticality is what makes it so exhilarating. Fiction has us creating superheroes that navigate it with ease. We have amusement parks to, for a short period of time, enjoy the ability to fly around. And in science, what exactly is up is still of the highest interest. We still call space the final frontier. As a whole, being able to go up is a symbol of freedom. Now you could say the first pair of siblings that took humans to the air were the Wright brothers, but I'd argue the Super Mario Bros. Did it in a way that feels more personal. Something I really think is undervalued from Miyamoto and Tezuka's interview are how they described the jump. Besides explaining how they designed the first Mario level, they describe how they designed the jump to have weight to it, to be free-flowing so the player could have an emotional attachment to the character Mario. It wasn't just a bundle of pixels, it was a character you could feel for, a character you could cry to and say, "Mario, why you jumping the pit? What's the matter you?" And I think Miyamoto was onto something. As when you think about game design before and after this game, the jump allowed for games to feel more real. And I know that doesn't make much sense because I ain't never met an Italian as athletic as Mario, but this game provided new understandings as to what video games could be. Before this point, games weren't associated with terms such as art, narrative, or characters. At most, they took things from movies or other mediums. But after this game, video games could be seen as more than chess or checkers, because now we had a hero named Mario travel through many worlds to save a princess. However cliche this may seem now, or how much it hasn't changed, it was one of gaming's first stories we could play. So, the reason Mario jumps was to make games more than they were? It's a weird conclusion, but the jump did a lot for gaming. It established the y-axis as something different and gave it gravity, and that in itself made games a lot more relatable. I don't know any other feeling in gaming that's more satisfying than jumping across a pit with Mario and clearing it. You could shoot with tanks or flip Tetris blocks, but nothing came close to doing the jump. And I think that's something many young gamers can feel when they play Mario. And maybe someone else would have came up with the jump if Nintendo didn't, but I think we really have to pay respects to this character and his legacy for the one ability that changed gaming. Mr. Cat, I won't feed you if you ruin my conclusions. I think I ruined it that time. Okay, let's get out of here. This has been Alax with a thought piece on gaming. If you enjoyed my ramblings in philosophy and whatnot, please like this video and subscribe. I'm trying to make videos surrounding topics like these more, so do not hesitate to join the RelaxAlax family. I'm trying to head in this direction. And down below, tell me, what topic would you like me to discuss in the future? There's a plethora of topics I could touch on, and no one's really done topics in this sense before. Also, how are your parents doing? Are they doing well? Also, did you brush your teeth this morning? No boy or girl is gonna want to meet up with you if you got a mouth looking like pre-game Delfino Plaza. Anyways, this has been Alax. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the flip side.